So there are several workarounds that people have gone through to make this relationship stronger, or try to, make their own timeline theory. The first thing is, as we've seen here, I've told you about the split timeline. It's been debated for so long, and Nintendo constantly was rewriting this bit of the timeline. They actually, at one point, they said that it's a single timeline theory and not a split timeline theory. And another point, they said, yeah, it is a split timeline theory, until they confirmed it just 2-3 years ago. So the first solution, in order for us to directly associate A Link to the Past with either side of the timeline, the adult or the child, is first off sort of negate interviews and quotes. Because as I've alluded to, Nintendo has not put any of the modern Zelda games in this area of the timeline, in the old era, which is A Link to the Past, the Legend of Zelda, and Zelda 2. So this has been out of date for decades, or for more than a decade now. So it's it's easy to say, or to make it more flexible. We don't need to follow the interviews or the quotes in the game itself that mention that A Link to the Past is necessarily tied with Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2. Yes, it is officially a prequel to these games, and this has been, like I said, an outdated, and Nintendo never, rewrote this or alluded to it for many years now. So you could easily negate this relationship and make it easier for you. Maybe if you want to put A Link to the Past here, in the adult timeline, for example, and put the old school Zelda games here, if it's convenient for you. So yeah, you could do that, or you could stick to the quotes. But this is one solution that people do. The second solution is putting games in. There are other games in the Zelda series that we don't know about, that are not necessarily have a place in the timeline, but we could, tie it in. We could maybe assume that Nintendo is going to update it sooner or later, or put games in, other games, most significantly and particularly the Four Swords series, or the Capcom series. What people tend to do is, and they like to do this, I'm not going to talk about it much, but is they use Four Swords Adventures as a link between A Link to the Past and Twilight Princess, since Ganon dies here. So that's what people tend to do, put A Link to the Past in the child timeline, and associated with the Four Swords Adventures as a major link between these two games. The reasons for so is we see Ganondorf die here, and he's incarnated here, and then which explains his existence in A Link to the Past. It is a bit iffy, and you have to depend a lot on flexibility, because I'm not going to talk about this much, but I'd like to refer to the Four Swords series, in their own universe, and not necessarily in their own timeline. But I like the fact that the three games, which is Minish Cap, Four Swords, and Four Swords Adventures, which I wrote down here, I like to put these in succession to each other and in one side of the timeline, because they basically seem like their own universe. Because, for three reasons actually why these games seem to have their own identity is: one, no talk of the Triforce whatsoever. The games never alluded to the Triforce. They only have it in the insignias and the royal logos and whatnot, but instead of the Triforce, they talk about something called the Light Force, or the Light Force, and the Force Gems. Both these elements, the Force Gems and the Light Force, they are the replacement of the Triforce in these games. Third off is there's no Master Sword. Instead, we have the Four Swords, or the Picori Blade. That's the major sword in the game, and this is the sword that was that sealed Ganondorf and Four Swords Adventures, which, like I said, that's why it seems a bit strange that in Twilight Princess he's dead, and then he's reincarnated and sealed with the Four Swords. But here he's not sealed with the Four Swords. He's actually sealed via the Seven Sages in the Dark World, via Ocarina of Time, the Imprisoning War relationship that I've talked about before. So it's sort of jarring or confusing. People like to avoid this confusion and say that legends change over time. It is a reason, but you know, it's getting tiring to just keep using this reasoning over and over again. So anyway, yeah, like we said, first these are the two solutions. Yeah, put games in between and negate the interviews and quotes here for the link to the past. The third solution, and I think it's the most important one for associating a link to the past. Let me just put the illustration back here. To either side of the child or adult timeline. And I think it is the most important solution, is how we look at the events of the Imprisoning War, which is the prologue of A Link to the Past. Like I said, people tend to refer to Imprisoning War to one event or one game, which is Ocarina of Time. But ever since this clutter happened, we could, you know, say that the Imprisoning War actually refers to an era or multiple eras of an ongoing hundreds of years war. And this is actually hinted at a bit in Twilight Princess. Yeah, but I tend to, this is another reason that people like to link A Link to the Past to this side of the timeline, is the other key scene in Twilight Princess is the interloper scene. I'm gonna try to put links to this here. It's a scene where one of the gods details a backstory in the Legend of Zelda series. Same case of the Dooku tree in Ocarina of Time, talking about the origin of the Triforce and the gods and whatnot. This actually further, you know, gives more backstory to that. We don't know where this takes place exactly. It could be also an era before Ocarina of Time, where the Ocarina of Time also alludes to the Great Wars. We could include that to the Imprisoning War. Yeah, like I said, the Imprisoning War can refer to multiple mini wars throughout an era or hundreds of years. It's not necessarily one event that takes place in a particular year or a particular time or a particular game. It takes place throughout multiple games. That's one solution of let me just write here, multiple games, spending multiple wars. That's the basic solution. So yeah, you could assume or say that A Link to the Past intro actually, you know, takes Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess into consideration. So the sealing can be happening throughout the era, or throughout these eras, the Great Wars and the Ocarina of Time itself, and the interlopus scene really alludes to lots of likenings to the Imprisoning War. We'll see the gods talking about mages with black magic coming and using their magic to their advantage, or sealing the Triforce itself. In which the gods obviously come down and seal the black magic so that interlopers can no longer use this dark force, which is in the form of the fused shadow, which is remember the four bits of pieces that you take after beating dungeons in Twilight Princess. So yeah, like I said, you can do that, or on the other hand, you could. And it's unfortunate that there's a really weak association in the adult timeline side, or the Wind Waker side, because we don't see any sealings happening in this side of the timeline. We do see Ganondorf assumingly dying and turning to stone, and the Master Sword being forever sealed underwater. Unless Nintendo puts another game in this adult timeline that assumingly rises the old Hyrule back from the depths of the seas, and the Master Sword comes back, it's really hard to associate A Link to the Past to the adult timeline series, especially since The Wind Waker already has its era, or has its amount of sequels, which are Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. These games are officially sequels to the Wind Waker. In Phantom Hourglass, it actually takes place with the same Link, indirectly after the Wind Waker, months after it. Spirit Tracks, on the other hand, takes place hundreds of years after Phantom Hourglass, with a different Link and a different Hyrule, in which remember the key scene in The Wind Waker in which the king talks about, he touches the Triforce and tells and wishes for the kids, or Link and Zelda, to get their new land or their new Hyrule, go find a new Hyrule above the seas. And that's what happens hundreds of years after The Wind Waker. Link actually, in the backstory, the Link of The Wind Waker finds this new Hyrule, sets up there, makes a new kingdom, and also the old mythology of the old Hyrule mixes up or combines with the new mythology of this land, with the new enemy and the Spirit Tracks, and how this Meladeus, or I forgot the name of the enemy, has been sealed for so long. So it has a new mythology, which makes A Link to the Past harder and harder to associate with this new mythology, because multiple new swords, like I said with the Four Swords series, new swords also form here, which is here the Phantom Blade, and here the Spirit Sword, or the Spirit Blade. So unless Nintendo again puts another game that says, okay, one of these swords will turn into the Master Sword, it's hard for us to associate A Link to the Past to the adult side of the timeline, which is The Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks. So yeah, like I said, going through the three solutions again. First off, like, we put other games for the Four Swords series to associate. Second of all, we negate the association between A Link to the Past and Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2. And third off is we expand the definition of the imprisoning war that's said in the A Link to the Past. So yeah, I think that's basically it with what I wanted to say in this video. I'm not going to talk about, if you guys like this, I'd like to further expand my theories and associations in another video. I actually want to talk more in depth about the Four Swords series and where they do take place in the timeline, and as well as the Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages, basically all the Capcom games. They're really vague in nature, and I'd like to point to some keywords or key events that we can finally I hope it open everybody's eyes and associate these games more to another side of the timeline. So yeah, that's it with what I want to say, and I hope everybody has enjoyed my ramblings and ranting about the Ocarina of Time and its significance in the timeline, and how all games from all eras are centered around this game. Now we have the upcoming Skyward Sword, which takes place before Ocarina of Time. It does mention that it's going to allude to the origin of the Master Sword. And we do know that it takes place in the sky, or Skyloft. There are maybe multiple hints here and there that we may get, hopefully, from Skyward Sword, and maybe it can allude or link us to where the Four Swords series take place, or maybe more theories and more talk about the Triforce and the Life Force, stuff like that. Hopefully we see this type of association, and hopefully Nintendo and Mr. Onuma don't negate the Four Swords series, because they've been vague for so long right now. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.